Welcome back. I'm so glad you came to video number 2 in our cold process soaper transformation series. If you happen to just randomly stumble upon this video, I would highly recommend going back and watching video number 1 in the series before starting here. It might make a little bit more sense. Otherwise, let's hit the ground running. Today we're using a fine-tooth comb to go over everything that you need to start soaping. You already know I value your time, so I did break this video apart into 2 sections. Section number 1 is going to be the equipment that you need to get started, and section number 2 is ingredients. So though this list is extremely detailed, you don't need to rush to get like a pen and paper. I created an entire downloadable guidebook that goes along with this entire series. It's kind of a mix of like resources, research, and a workbook, kind of all wrapped up in one little bow that follows along with this series that would be a great accompaniment to watching it. For example, going along with today's video in the series is a section in the guidebook that has links to everything that I have found, as well as some tips and tricks. If you are interested in purchasing this guide, it is listed at the top of the description box. Thank you so much if you decide to purchase and support me. It means so much. Let's get back to business. So first section here is going to be equipment. And I know when I say equipment, a lot of people get like worried that it's going to be all of these huge, expensive things, and that's not necessarily the case. As far as like the financial perspective, you know, all of these pieces of equipment are a one-time purchase unless something breaks or you have to replace it. So keep that in mind as well. So right off the break, something that you are going to need and use every single time that you soap is a thermometer. Okay, and you want to get a thermometer that measures surface temperature, not body temperature. I happen to have one of the forehead scanner, like infrared type ones, that does measure surface and body temperature. I definitely do not recommend getting the glass type of thermometer that you stick in that has the mercury in the middle. The reason that you need a thermometer is because when you are mixing your oils together and you heat them, and then you mix your lye water solution and heat that, those 2 separate mixtures need to be within 10 degrees of each other before you combine them and soap. It's also important to know the temperature of both of your mixtures because some people prefer to soap hotter when the temperatures are warmer, above 100 degrees, and some people prefer to soap at room temperature or, you know, below 80 degrees. Deciding that will come with time. The best kind of thing I can say is over my time soaping, they behave better when soaped at cooler temperatures. The next thing you're going to need is a scale. The more precise, the better, though I don't think that you need to be spending $40 or $50 to make sure that you have like a super precision scale. You're also going to need various mixing containers. I highly recommend plastic here, and again, not glass, which actually let's talk about that for a minute. So earlier when we talked about the glass thermometer, and then now that we're talking about mixing, obviously, as we've discussed, everything's going to get really hot, and over time, your glass can etch. So what I would say here is to use plastic. Just any plastic will not do. You have to look at the bottom of the plastic and look for like that little mark on it. You need to make sure that within that mark is the number 5. That is a plastic that is approved for the temperatures that and chemicals that we are working with. And along with this, I would definitely make sure that you get some that are not ones that you use to cook food for the people in your house. The fragrance oils, the ingredients, you never know what could stick around for later, so you want to make sure that they are totally separate. The next piece we have is a stick blender, and the reason you want to get a stick blender over like a general blender, yes, they will both work, but it is a lot harder to mix all of your materials in like your typical house blender. A stick blender will get the job of mixing your oil and lye together to make sure they are combined very, very quickly and efficiently, and personally it is a lot easier to clean. The last kind of things that we need is small cups for measuring. And I always use the little ones that you use to like rinse your mouth after toothpaste. For me, it's just easier. There are tons of options. There's plastic, there's silicone. You know, you'll be using these cups to measure things like your fragrance oils, or if you are diluting colorants into your oils. I just find that it's a lot easier cleanup wise to use these little plastic cups. And again, you can use whichever ones you want. Of course, you're going to need your soaping safety gear, goggles, face mask, long sleeves, socks, and gloves. Of course, you always want to be wearing gloves. I feel like these things are obvious and need no further explanation. And then randomly, you'll need some kitchen towels. You might need isopropyl alcohol in like a little spray bottle. I just reused a spray bottle that I already had for like detangler for my daughter's hair. Just wash it out real good. And let it fully air dry before adding the isopropyl alcohol to it. You're obviously going to need space for making your soap and letting it cure, which we'll talk about here shortly in case you're not familiar. Of course, you're going to need whatever soap mold you are making your soap in. So whether it be a loaf mold or an individual mold, those things depend on personal preference. I personally would choose a loaf mold just because there is a lot more versatility that goes along with that. You can kind of do design wise whatever you want, and then everything is kind of cohesive. But you can use individual molds if you want. Silicone, I think, works best. Side note, if you do decide to go with a loaf mold, you will need a way to cut your soap afterward, and a way that can cut them evenly. I've used several different soap cutters. This one here is my favorite, and I really like the way that everything is super even. The box cutter worked fine, but I did have to do a lot of adjusting to make sure that everything was an equal size. So keep that in mind as well. You can definitely use just a plain cutting board and a kitchen knife. Plenty of people do it successfully. But if you need a little bit more help getting your bars to be evenly cut, then I would recommend a multiple bar cutter. Now on to section 2. This section is all about ingredients. We talked before about how many different options there are. So kind of what I decided to do here, because there are so many, I don't want anyone to get like analysis paralysis, right? That's the worst possible thing that you can do, is sit for days and days and days trying to figure out exactly what to use. So we're going to cover basic soap making ingredients. And then in my next video in this series, we're going to cover additives and kind of like specialty oils and those kinds of things. Now, as you know, if you have watched my channel before, you know I'm a huge proponent for the quick mixes from Brambleberry. I think that they are a fabulous starting off point, but I know that that might not be for everyone. I wanted to kind of highlight why I like quick mix so much. You know, in a recent video, I talked about whether or not using soap bases is right in your handmade business. Want to spend the additional time doing the research and purchasing the individual products and formulating that, or you don't have that additional time. Me personally, I love quick mixes because it takes some of that beginning thought and need for formulation out of the picture. You know, I don't have to worry about whether or not my combination is going to be a good combination and produce a quality bar of soap. I know it's going to, because Brambleberry is a trusted supplier. So consider that when you're deciding. But me personally, I stick with the quick mixes. My favorite is the Lots of Lather, but I have also used the basic and think that it's great as well. The second product that you're going to need is sodium hydroxide lye. Now, sodium hydroxide lye comes in flake form and in like a, you know, one of those plastic bottles that has the safety seal top. You can order this online in plenty of places, but I prefer to get it locally. I get it from Ace Hardware, but just make sure that when ordering, you choose what is 100%. Don't purchase a bottle that is cut with anything else, and it will tell you on there 100% live crystals. The reason I prefer to get it locally is 1, because it's local, and 2, when you're purchasing it online, because it is a chemical and a hazardous material, normally you have to pay extra or pay a fee because of that. So it just helps, you know, save a couple of dollars. Of course, we need some kind of liquid to help dissolve the lye crystals. Distilled water, I think, is the the cheapest and safest and easiest route when you're just getting started. We covered in the last video of the series that you can use beer, you can use all kinds of things, you can use milk, you can use, the possibilities are literally endless, right? But I think when just starting out, distilled water is a safe bet. You need to master the basics before you branch off and do something, you know, a lot more complex. I feel like you'll be a lot more successful that way. Get one recipe down before you move on to a bunch of others. All right, titanium dioxide. This kind of goes along with mica powder. It is a little bit different though. So titanium dioxide is a powder. It can also come in like a brick form, but anyway, when talking about cold process soap, we use titanium dioxide to lighten or whiten the more natural color of soap. So when you have 2 bars of soap, one that looks a little bit more tan will be a natural color, and then one that is pure white will have been mixed with titanium dioxide. This comes in a powder form. You can get it from plenty of different suppliers. It's actually really great to have on hand for a lot of different products that you might make if you're venturing into other things aside from soap. But I do find that this is one that commonly gets overlooked, and then people wish that they had it once they're soaping. Mica powder is just that. These are relatively inexpensive. You can get mica powders from anywhere. You can get sample packs from Amazon. I think are really great when you're just starting out because it will help you figure out which colors you use a lot and which you don't need to repurchase. I have plenty of sample packs that I have used, and I noticed I use a ton of purple, a ton of gold, a lot of pinks, but not really any reds at all. And my blue kind of goes back and forth. So once you buy those sample packs and you see what you're running out of first, over time, that can help you determine what you need to order larger sizes of. And a fragrance oil. Again, when it comes to fragrance oil, you just have to really kind of just like pick one and move on. There are so many great fragrance oils to choose from. The list is never ending, and the list is also ever evolving. So what I did was I went ahead and included some tips to help you pick a fragrance oil that's right for you without taking 10 years to figure it out. I included that in the guidebook, and I also included some of my suggestions of ones that I have used and whether or not they are good for soaping, because not every fragrance oil is made the same and not every one is going to be a good one for soaping. So I included that in the guidebook, as well as a link to my growing fragrance oil review sheet. Actually, what that is every time I try a fragrance oil, I add how it soaped to that growing fragrance oil review sheet. Right now, my list has Simbi fragrances, Brambleberry, Wholesale Supplies Plus, Dupe fragrance. There are a couple of others as well. And again, it is ever growing. So that's a really great place to start. Now, in this last part of the video, I just wanted to very briefly discuss a couple of suppliers that I love using and I would recommend for providing you with quality ingredients. I always recommend doing your own research, but these are a few just to help you get started that are very trusted. I would highly recommend Wholesale Supplies Plus, Brambleberry, and Mixie as a good jumping off point for getting your supplies. Wholesale Supplies Plus overall has a really great variety of things. They are relatively inexpensive in comparison with others, and your order ships for free if you purchase over $25. And just in case you're not familiar with the shipping of these materials, they are all very heavy, so that is a really huge savings. Brambleberry, I think, has really great fragrance oils, and everything on their site, of course, is catered towards soapers primarily. So as a supplier, it's a really great one for soapers specifically. You're much more likely to find a well-behaving fragrance oil on Brambleberry than you are any other website. Finally, Mixie. Mixie is a very luxury, I would say, supplier. I get tons of supplies from there because I personally well, really, I get tons of supplies from any of these places, but I really enjoy Mixie. They are a bit more pricey, but they do often have good sales and coupons. And I think that as far as like fragrance oils go, their selection of fragrance oils is a lot more luxurious than a Wholesale Supplies Plus or a Brambleberry. They also have pre-mixed lye. if that is something that you might be interested in. That's a really nice thing to have, though it is costly in my opinion. It might be worth it if mixing lye is something that you're not interested in doing, but you want to make cold process. And with that, I'm going to end this video. Don't forget to leave your questions down in the comments below. I am compiling all of them to answer in a Q&A video at the end of this series. And here on the screen now, I went ahead and put 2 videos that I would recommend you going to watch. The first one is my best and worst 7 fragrance oils of last year. You can grab some great suggestions from that video, even though it is a little bit older. And the other video is how to start your cold process soap business with $100. Okay. Next up in the series, again, we are going to go over all of the additives and oils that you could possibly think of and how they affect our cold process soap. I'll see you in the next video.